So hello everyone and welcome to this video. So after a long hiatus due to boredom and my disdain of competitive GeoGuessr, streaks are gonna return to this channel, and they will on one of the most, if not the most difficult map and game mode, and that is AI generated world NMPZ. This is because this map is full of hard and even many border locations, which has led to some conspiracy theories suggesting that it's not AI made. Please note that the main purpose of this streak is educational, so I'm going to do voiceover trying to explain my full thought process. And without any further ado, let's start. So this is a dirt road in a neighborhood in Latin America. The fact that we had unpainted one or two-story brick houses and others were colorful means we are in Peru. And as it was flat, I guessed on the coast around Chimbote, and that was an insane guess. In round 2 we are on another dirt road, but the dirt this time is brown. The sun is north, and that pole in the distance is Argentinian. But I should have guessed more north because of the dirt road. And here we have a really wide road with a line of trees on its side, which usually means Ukraine. I can also see a mountain there in the background to the left, which suggests that we are in the west. And we were. And here we can see a double white line, some Chinese, a Hong Kong black and white plate, and some high-rise apartments in the distance, so this round was quite easy. Here we are on a 4-lane divided highway in what looked like Europe. The thick middle white lines pointed to me towards the Balkans, and the fact that we had dry rolling hills implied that we were probably in North Macedonia, and the road direction correlated with that of the main highway, and it indeed was. Here we are in a city for a change, and I first tried to look for language, but then the Indonesian flag there was crucial. The black plates with 3 separate pairs of letters are also Indonesian, and as it was flat and dry, I guess Surabaya, but it actually was on Timor. And here we can see the traditional Swedish short side dashes, and its Hungarian trees are short spruces and birches, so I guess north. And it was closer to Norway. If you see narrow purple cobblestone roads, you're probably in the Netherlands. Those one-story houses, the roofs and the windows also fit. I was however surprised to see that it was close to Germany. Here the language is Indonesian or Malaysian. We have some palms which are not oil palms. It took me quite long to decide here, but the yellow parade, the red and white curbs, and the roofs were much more Indonesian. And I miss them when playing, but those poles to the right are also Indonesian only. On this round we have a red dirt road, a dark-skinned man, some banana trees, fences and red roofs. And this indicated that we are probably in Uganda. And it was, but in Entebbe. After achieving a 10 streak, we had our first round with Mediterranean climate, and these rocky dry hills are features of the karst landscape you see in the Western Balkans. Although I initially doubted between Croatia and Montenegro, most of the latter is greener except the west, which has no coverage in small roads, so I went with Croatia. This round was the toughest yet. We were on a sandy, narrow road in some green but warm rolling hills. That distant house didn't fit the pattern and it was actually pointing me towards Belgium and northern France, where at the same time the poles, the road, and the rolling hills suggested Italy around Tuscany. After a bit of thinking and looking at the road, I decided to trust my intuition, and it was really close. This was a classic Gen 2 coverage in a German city, which was confirmed by the German language on the shop. I guessed west because it is the most urban, and it was Cologne. This is Gen 2 coverage in a shrubland. The multiple arrows on the road confirmed my first thought of South Africa. These shrublands are common south of the main mountain range, but it was much more east than I thought. This was another toughie since I couldn't see the bollards. We were on a road with long white side dashes in the middle of the pine forest. The latter and the bollards implied Baltics. The fact that the dashes were very long and the condition of the road was not optimal excluded Estonia. And the sand shoulders were the deciders for Latvia or Lithuania. I tried to pinpoint, but that was unsuccessful, although it still was Latvia. Here this was a poorly kept road through vast flat agricultural land. The sun was north, and we had the red and white Argentinian chevrons. I guessed middle because it was really agricultural, but it was actually closer to Buenos Aires. This wasn't a nice round because we are facing a backyard and a wooden warehouse, but at least it was Gem 4. That triangular tree looked like a cedar, which is common in the west coast of the USA and in Vancouver. The relative untidiness of the area and the presence of a palm tree made me decide the US. I guess Portland, but it was Seattle. And this one here took a lot of time. Maybe it was the round that took the most. And this was a wide road through a residential area in rainy weather. The poles, which were painted white, and the fences were typical of the Soviet Union. It turned out to be a 50-50 between Russia and Ukraine after some elimination. The simple poles, the fact that they were painted white, and the abundance of fruit trees, the green fences, and the white building at the end there made me think Ukraine more than Russia. And the rainy weather suggested the Dnieper Valley. After some hesitation I guessed, and it actually was much more west than. We continued with a small road through the lush countryside on the foothills. That post seemed to have yellow and white paint, and it went all the way to the bottom, implying Taiwan. And also, if you see rows of simple, tall, planted palm trees, you are likely to be in Taiwan. For the 20th streak, we had some arid but not completely desert landscape. The Gen 2 coverage and the abundance of tall cacti, which are native to the Americans, pointed me towards northern Mexico. And it was Mexico, but in Baja. And this round should have taken less time than it did. At first I simply thought that Cyrillic and Gen 4 is equal to Bulgaria. However, at the back of my head I had thoughts that the trees, the type of coverage, and even the road lines were Hungarian. Initially I still favored Bulgaria, and as I thought that the vegetation would be more coastal for this to fit, I even looked for a fitting road. But as I couldn't find it, maybe because I wasn't looking in the right area, I started to panic. I fortunately decided in favor of clues and logic, but I was still quite annoyed that this was coastal, and I didn't look at Burgas. Fortunately, the next round was easy and offered no need for interpretation. The camera was low, and using stone walls as guardrails is very common in Japan. And as it was lush, I went Kyushu, but it was a random island not far from Tokyo. Typically American pickup trucks and mailboxes suggested the United States, and the presence of a cliff-shaped mountain and the red soil implied that this was volcanic Hawaii. I went Maui because of the direction of mountains, but it was Oahu. This time we had a concrete road with a double yellow line in a Latin American residential area. Escuela is school in Spanish, so this was in Brazil. And given how green this was, the terracotta roofs, the one unpainted brick building, and the feeling that this poster gave to be from the mass party because it has some blue, I went Bolivia east of the Andes, and it was just Santa Cruz. Here we had a concrete road again, but this time with no road lines. I could see some palm trees, but not too many in the distance, and we had mountains all around which were not extremely tall. We also had some tires on the side of the road, which pointed me even more towards the Philippines. And the relative lack of palm trees for this country suggested that this was Luzon, being even more north than I ever considered. Then I had an issue with Geo, but after refreshing, the new location loaded. It was a location with yellow outer road lines, so it was definitely in the South African region. I instantly guessed Eswatini because of the hills and the yellow soil, and also the Gen 3 coverage, but unfortunately this was South Africa, and the streak came to an end. When I opened the location, I considered that I should have spent more time on it because the hills were too small for Eswatini. But as always on this map, the other side of the image looked much more standard. And I also missed the South African wooden pole. But even though 25 is not a very high number in today's GeoGuessr streak standards, I think it's good enough for this map and in this mode because it's, as I've said before, it's one of the hardest, if not the hardest mode to play. And that's why I think it's good enough for this video, and more importantly, it is fit for educational purposes. So thank you all for watching, subscribe, like, and see you next time. Bye.